but to Elros, who chose to be a king of men. Still a great span of years was allotted, many times that of the men of Middle-earth, and all his line, the kings and lords of the royal house, had long life, even according to the measure of the Númenorians. But Elros lived 500 years, and ruled the Númenorians 400 years and 10. Hey everyone, Yoiston here, and I hope you all are doing well, wherever you are in Middle-earth. Today we will be exploring the history of the character of Elros, the brother of Elrond Half-elven, who chose to be a man instead of an elf, and became the first king of Númenor. My friend Carl over at GeekZone has made a video on Elrond, and we hope these videos will go well together. He is a good friend of the channel and does some great work, so please head on over through the link in the description to his channel to check that video out. Also, please check out the related videos and articles linked in the description and cards for more information. Thank you all for joining me today. Let us begin our tale. Elros, the son of Eärendil and Elwing, was born in 532 of the First Age. He was the twin brother of Elrond, and they were both deemed as Perithil, or the Half-elven, as were their parents. For Eärendil was the son of the man Tuor and the elf Idril, and Elwing was the daughter of Dior, who himself was the son of Beren and Luthien. However, Elrond and Elros, as well as their parents, were born before the choice of the half-elves was bestowed by the Valar. Elros had dark hair, and would have much the same height and appearance of elvenkind, although his choice, when the choice would be made, would not be of the firstborn children of Ilúvatar. His name, Elros, meant Starfoam in Sindarin. Elros and his family lived in the havens of Sirion, in the south part of Beleriand. In the year 538, the third Kinsalang occurred, when the remaining sons of Feanor, Maithros, Maglor, Amros, and Amrod, led an attack on the havens for the Silmaril of Beren and Luthien that was now in the Nauglamir. Elwing, who bore the jewel cut from Morgoth's crown by her grandfather Beren, leapt into the sea, escaping the sons of Feanor with the Nauglamir. But, in doing this action that would eventually save the world, she had left her children behind, being saved by the Vala Ulmo and sent to her husband, Eärendil, who yet sailed on the high seas. The sons of Eärendil and Elwing were spared during the sack of the havens, and, now that their parents had gone into the west, never to step foot on mortal lands again, but to rather fly above them, the young half-elves were left without their parents. Eärendil and Elwing took great sorrow, for they worried that their sons would be slain. However, in what is perhaps the kindest deed of all of the children of Feanor, Maglor, whose heart grew weary of his dreadful oath and the deeds done in service of it, took pity on Elrond and Elros. He fostered them as he could, and a love grew between them. Thus Elros and his brother were saved, and they came of age. There is an alternative story where Elrond and Elros were found by other elves sometime after all of this, meaning that they were not long with the sons of Feanor. In this story, Elros was playing in a waterfall, thus giving him the name Elros, which would have meant Elf of the Spray. Now I'm not sure if this is canon or just an old story. Anyway, I'm not sure that they joined in the fight against Morgoth during the War of Wrath, for while it was a lengthy and important war in the history of the world, they were still rather young, especially in elven measurements. After the war was won, the Valar gave to the half-elves a choice, and they could be considered of the kindred of elves and thus be immortal, or they could be of men, and therefore mortal and not bound to these circles of the world. Elrond, Eärendil, and Elwing chose to be counted among the Elder race, but Elros chose to be of the race of men. He became the leader of the Edain, and later Dunedain, the men of the West, and his would be the fate of our kindred, for he would yet receive the gift of Ilúvatar and die. But while he was yet alive, he did much. In the year 32 of the Second Age, many years after most of Beleriand had drowned beneath the Great Sea, Elros led his people who had been loyal to the Elves and Valar to Andor, the land of gift, Westerness, Númenor of the kings, the island that was a gift for such men from the Valar. Elros and his ships were guided by the star of Eärendil, his father, and they came at last to Númenor. The island was also named Elenna-norë, meaning Starward's land in Quenya, or Elenna for Starwards. And indeed, although the common tongue of Númenor was Andunaik, Elros set the precedent of having a kingly name in Quenya, which would be broken by his descendants when they began to grow spiteful towards the elves. He was therefore called Tar-Minyatur, meaning the High First Lord, and he took the throne at 90 years old, but was still young for a Númenorian, as that kindred was granted long life, and their kings more so. Being part Elvish himself, Tar-Minyatur was a great friend of the elves, which would continue with many of his Númenorian descendants, and those who would be called the Faithful, others of his descendants who would be the Lords of Andúnië and their allies. The Lords of Andúnië would not be the kings of Númenor, but they were related to them as they were still the descendants of Tar-Minyatur, and that line would become the House of Elendil. Tar-Minyatur received gifts from the elves of Tol Eressëa in the west, such as flowers from the gardens of Yavanna and a seedling from the white tree Celeborn, which would become Nimloth, the white tree of Númenor. Such gifts from the elves helped the island flourish. Tar-Minyatur also had other relics that he took with him to Númenor, the Ring of Barahir, and according to the unfinished tales, the king's sword Aranruth had once been the sword of Thingol and was now the sword of the king, given to Elros by his mother Elwing. He also had with him the great axe Dramborleg of his grandfather Tur and the bow of Bregor from the house of Beor. Of these, only the Ring of Barahir would go to the Lords of Andúnië, and it would survive the downfall of Númenor. Tar-Minyatur ruled from Armenelos, the city of kings, and would have 4 children with an unknown wife. He had 3 sons, Vardamir Noloman, Manwendil, and Atanalkar, and a daughter, Tindolmiel. He ruled Númenor for 410 years, until 442 of the Second Age, and he died at the age of 500 years old. Elros Tar-Minyatur lived the longest of any man in the history of Arda, and his son Vardamir Noloman, or Tar-Vardamir, was already old when he took the scepter of Númenor, and he was only a king in title, for he immediately chose to surrender the scepter and kingship to his son, Tar-Amondil. Númenor had been founded and prospered under the leadership and rule of Elros Tar-Minyatur, and he left a legacy of elven friendship and high honor behind him for his descendants to follow, even through the lines of Elendil and Aragorn Elessar. And so ends the tale of Elros Tar-Minyatur, the first king of Númenor. From the history of Elros, we see that many incredible wonders may be achieved in one's time, even if such things change afterwards. Elros willingly chose mortality and impermanence, and the beauty of life and existence truly comes from such an impermanence. So with the time that we have, we must do what we can to make the most of it, not just for ourselves, but also for others, like Elros did. Thank you all so much for watching. I really hope you all enjoyed this video. If you did, please be sure to hit that like button and share this with a friend. What are your thoughts, questions, additions, and corrections about Elros? Let me know in the comments below. In my mind, Elros is a very interesting and somewhat unknown character in the Legendarium, for he connects Elrond to the race of Númenor and the descendants of Westernesse, making Aragorn Elrond's very distant nephew. And it is quite inspiring that, even though Elros could have chosen to be an elf and immortal, his heart was with the race of men and mortality, and so, even with death in mind, he chose the latter option. Please check out GeekZone's video on Elrond for that side of the story, which is very interesting as well. I have also made a video a while back on Elrond, which I'll link also. Please check out our music channel, Facebook, Twitter, merch, and Patreon for a podcast and Discord server. Royan and I just made a podcast episode where we discuss our favorite towns or cities in Arda, as well as how we would open and close the Amazon Lord of the Rings show. Please check out our Patreon if you're interested. Links for all of those are in the description below. Thanks to our Valar tier patrons, Adrian De la Torre, Chris Ortner, Peter Shepard, and Kyle Wetzel. Thank you guys so much, as well as all of our patrons. Finally, don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell button to join the Men of the West and all of the Free Peoples today, and I'll see you all again next week with part 2 of our What's Different series concerning The Two Towers, where we discuss book and movie differences. Everyone, as always, thank you all so much for joining me on this adventure. Until the next one, my great friends.